I'm not supposed to be burying them. They supposed to be burying me. Voice on Thursday, we talked like we was talking. And then for him to be gone on Monday, yes, I'm hurt. Yes, I feel some type of way. Yes, I feel like I was disrespected because that's my boy. That was my boy.
On December 1st, 2025, inside a busy tire shop on West Camp Wisdom Road in Dallas, everything seemed like an ordinary workday. Customers came in and out, the air smelled like rubber and engine oil, and mechanics moved from car to car, doing what they did every single day. But behind that normal routine, something dark was quietly building. And in just a few seconds, it would explode into one of the most shocking workplace tragedies the community had ever seen. This wasn't a robbery. This wasn't some random act of violence. This was an employee turning a gun on his own manager. Not after a loud fight. Not after threats. Not after anyone saw it coming. It happened so fast, so quietly, that people nearby didn't even realize what had happened until it was too late. Before we go deeper, let me say this. If you're watching this right now, don't just sit through this story. Stories like this deserve to be heard, understood, and learned from. So like this video, share it, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Mystoracrimes. Click the bell icon so you won't miss any of our deep dive stories. Because cases like this, they're disturbing, heartbreaking, and real. Now, let's talk about what really happened that afternoon. Because this wasn't just violence. This was betrayal inside a small workplace where everyone thought they knew each other. The victim, 42-year-old Billy B.J. Brightman, wasn't just a manager at Rent-A-Tire. He was a father, a husband, someone many in the neighborhood described as a good man, the kind of person who tried to look out for others. His friends said he was generous and protective, always willing to help someone who needed a break. People trusted him. They respected him. No one believed he had an enemy. And then there was the suspect, 21-year-old Marlon Lawrence, a tire technician at the same shop, fresh into adulthood, working a regular job, not someone who had been making trouble or drawing negative attention. As far as the public knows, there were no major arguments, no dramatic confrontations, no long history of conflict between the two men. If anything, the relationship between a manager and a young employee is usually routine, instructions, supervision, day-to-day tasks. Nothing that hinted at violence. That day, around 1:10 p.m., customers were coming and going, workers were focused on repairs, and Brightman was doing what he always did, managing the shop, checking on tasks, talking with employees, trying to keep things running smoothly. No one noticed anything unusual about Marlon's behavior. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't threatening anyone. According to surveillance footage that police later reviewed, Marlon simply approached Brightman from behind. No warning. No words. No chance for BJ to defend himself or even turn around. He raised a gun and fired into his manager's back. And while Brightman was already losing control of his body, already collapsing, Marlon shot him again, this time in the face. Imagine the shock for the people standing nearby. One moment they were hearing the sound of tools, motors, conversations, and the next moment their manager was on the ground bleeding. The air filled with confusion, panic, and disbelief. This wasn't supposed to happen here. Not like this. Not at all. Chaos broke out immediately after the shots were fired. Workers who had known BJ for years froze in disbelief before rushing toward him, shouting his name, trying to understand what had just happened. Some ran to call 911. Others backed away in terror, unsure if Marlon was going to fire again. Customers who were inside the shop ran outside, leaving cars, tools, and belongings behind. You can imagine that kind of fear. One second everything is normal, and the next, someone you see every day is lie on the ground, and the shooter is someone who works right beside you. While everyone else was panicking, Marlon didn't run far. In fact, police later said that he stayed close. He didn't flee across town or disappear for hours. When officers arrived at the scene, responding to frantic 911 calls about a workplace shooting, they found BJ on the floor, bleeding heavily. Paramedics tried to stabilize him, but the injuries were too severe. He died at the shop where he had worked, surrounded by people who cared about him and strangers who could not believe what they had just witnessed. But the moment the officers laid eyes on Marlon, the case took an unexpected turn. He didn't deny what he had done. According to official reports, he admitted to shooting his manager. There was no long chase, no complicated manhunt, no dramatic standoff. He was arrested at the scene and taken into custody. That alone raised even more questions. What makes someone do something this extreme and then just wait for the police? As investigators began piecing together what happened, they reviewed surveillance footage from inside the shop. The video confirmed what witnesses had been trying to explain in their shock. Marlon approached BJ from behind, lifted the gun, and fired. No hesitation, no argument beforehand, no moment where people thought they could stop it. It was direct and deliberate, and that scared the community even more. Because violence with a motive is terrible, but violence with no clear motive is terrifying. Detectives started questioning employees, hoping someone could explain the tension or conflict that might have triggered the attack. But no one could give a clear answer. People said BJ wasn't the kind of manager who mistreated workers. He wasn't known for shouting or humiliating anyone. And Marlon wasn't known for causing trouble. This only deepened the mystery. Why would a 21-year-old employee suddenly choose to take the life of a man who, by all accounts, had no personal issue with him? The police eventually released Marlon's mugshot to the public. People stared at the photo, trying to make sense of it. His expression didn't offer any clues. He didn't look angry. He didn't look scared. He just looked blank, like someone who had crossed a line he couldn't come back from. Meanwhile, the community mourned BJ. His family was devastated. Friends described him as hardworking, caring, and deeply loved. For them, this wasn't just a crime story. It was a life ripped away.
45, 150, and that's when I started seeing, like, the crime scene.
James Luck, a friend of 20 years, had actually spoken to Brightman early Monday morning. He swung by the shop that afternoon, and confusion set in, describing him as a motivated, selfless family man.
Just unbelievable, just for it to actually roll out the way it did. Safe out there. That's the only thing he always would project to me, like, be safe out there, bro. Be safe out there, bro. They just thinking of him always telling me that, it's just kind of...
As the investigation continued, detectives pushed even harder to understand what had led to such a sudden and brutal act. They searched Marlon's background, looking for signs of previous violence, complaint at work, or any documented issues. But nothing obvious stood out. There were no major criminal records released to the public, no long history of workplace disputes, no trail of threats or warnings. It was as if this moment of violence came out of nowhere, a sudden point where something inside him snapped, but without a clear trigger. And that is what made the situation even more frightening. People understand conflict. People understand heated arguments. But unprovoked, point-blank violence? That stays with you. Police interviewed every employee who had been in the shop that day. Some workers said they didn't see anything unusual in the hours before the shooting. No argument, no tension, no raised voices. Others said Marlon had been quiet, maybe quieter than usual, but not in a way that made anyone suspicious. One worker described the moment he heard the gunshot, a sound so out of place that at first he thought something had fallen or exploded in the back. But then he saw BJ on the ground and realized that the sound wasn't an accident. It was intentional. Authorities also searched for the firearm Marlon used. According to reports, he had brought a gun into the workplace that day. That alone raised more questions. Had he planned this? Did he intend to kill BJ specifically? Or was he carrying it for another reason and something triggered him? Investigators didn't release a public motive. Not because they were hiding it, but because Marlon didn't give them one. And his silence left a massive hole in the narrative. Meanwhile, word spread quickly through the Dallas community. Social media posts poured in from people who knew BJ personally. Co-workers talked about how he treated them fairly and how he tried to help younger workers find their footing. Friends wrote tributes, calling him a loving father, a provider, someone who deserved none of this. As these posts circulated, people grew more emotional and angry, demanding answers that simply weren't available. By the next day, local news channels had covered the story extensively. They showed the tire shop taped off with yellow police tape, officers walking in and out, customers standing in shock outside the building. News anchors repeated the same haunting details. A trusted manager shot twice by an employee who worked directly under him. A 21-year-old charged with murder and taken to the Dallas County Jail. No known motive. No explanation. Even customers who had visited the shop before were shaken. They said the environment was always lively and friendly, that BJ often came out to talk to people, ask about their cars, or crack jokes about the long wait times. For a place known for regular customers, familiar faces, and everyday routine, this level of violence felt unreal. Many people who lived nearby said they avoided driving past the shop for days because the sight of it made them feel uneasy. And through it all, Marlon remained in custody, offering no clarity. Investigators noted that he admitted to the shooting, but he didn't explain why. That silence, that lack of reason, became almost as disturbing as the crime itself. As days passed, the community tried to piece together their own theories about what might have pushed Marlon to do something so extreme. Some wondered if there had been a private disagreement no one overheard. Others speculated about personal stress, hidden anger, or something going on in his life outside of work. But these were just theories. None of them had evidence behind them. And that is what made this case so unsettling, the complete lack of answers. BJ's family didn't get a note, a warning, or even a hint of what was coming. And Marlon, sitting in a jail cell, wasn't offering even the slightest explanation. When the arrest affidavit became public, it confirmed the details many already feared. The shots came from behind. BJ never even turned around. He never had a chance to speak, defend himself, or run. That single detail changed the tone of the entire tragedy. This wasn't a heated argument. This wasn't a fight gone wrong. It was an execution-style attack inside a workplace where people trusted one another. It forced many viewers to ask themselves, how much do we really know about the people we work with every day? BJ's funeral drew a large crowd. Friends, relatives, neighbors, and even former customers showed up to support the grieving family. People spoke about his kindness, his patience, and the way he carried himself as a father and provider. His wife and children faced the unimaginable reality of losing him in a place he went to every day to earn a living. It was painful to watch, and even more painful to understand that they may never receive the closure they desperately needed. Meanwhile, Marlon sat in the Dallas County Jail, charged with murder. Reporters said he remained quiet during transport, giving no sign of remorse, no sign of anger, and no clues about what was going through his mind. The mugshot that circulated across news platforms only raised more questions. It wasn't the expression people expected from someone who had just committed such a violent act. He didn't look panicked or emotional. He simply looked empty, and sometimes that emptiness is more frightening than rage. As investigators and prosecutors prepared the case, people online continued to talk about it. Some expressed sympathy for BJ's family. Others were angry, demanding a deeper explanation. Many were just confused, struggling to understand how a young man with no major history of violence could suddenly make a choice that destroyed multiple lives in seconds. And that's the haunting thing about real crime stories. Sometimes there is no clean answer, no neat motive, no reason that makes sense. So let me ask you this. What pushes a person across a line they can never come back from? How does someone go from quiet employee to killer without a single warning sign? Is it bottled up anger, mental instability, a moment of emotional collapse, or something darker that even they can't articulate? And even if we found the answer, would it ever be enough to justify what happened? So here's what I need from you. If this case disturbs you the way it disturbs me, share this video right now. Get people talking about it. Drop your theories in the comments about what could have driven Marlon to do this. Subscribe to Mystoracrimes and smash that bell icon because Billy Brightman's family deserves answers and justice. Hit that like button if you believe this story matters. This is Mystoracrimes, and we don't let these cases disappear into silence. Your engagement helps keep these stories alive, and it reminds the world that victims like BJ should never be forgotten.